So this is Luke chapter 21, the scripture for May 12th. Now I'll admit that I don't know a whole lot about architecture. Most of what I know really is just you shouldn't replace load-bearing walls unless you're being really careful about it. And also the rest of it is really just stuff I know from having played with Legos when I was a kid. And what I learned from Legos is that if you're building a structure, it's really good to get the foundation solid before you build on top of it, because no matter how nicely your structure is built on top of the foundation, if the foundation isn't taken care of and isn't really supported, then ultimately there are going to be cracks that appear in the foundation. And that's going to lead to the failure of your structure. Regardless of how careful you are at the top, if you're not careful laying the foundation, your structure will fail. So this is Jesus' critique, ultimately, of the Jewish religious system of his time. The system itself wasn't problematic, but the way that the religious leaders were practicing the Jewish religious system was. You see, instead of caring for the widow, this religion sucked her dry of all financial resources, suggesting that it was good that she gave everything that she owned to the temple, instead of asking the people of the temple if they could give stuff to support her financially. Instead of teaching God's people to worship, it simply adorned the temple, as if having a beautiful temple serves as a true replacement for worship. And because the foundation was faulty, everything needed to be deconstructed, unbuilt, one block at a time, torn down, so that the foundation could be repaired. I think that sometimes God needs for us to hit rock bottom so that we can repair the foundation of our life of faith. This is what Jesus is doing to the religious leaders of his time. And I think this is what God desires to do with all creation. Don't be afraid, in other words, when the foundations start to shake. That's what Jesus means when he talks of wars and earthquakes and plagues. They reveal the cracks in the foundation, and God intends to expose and deal with these cracks when Christ returns. Some of the cracks have been exposed in the last several weeks as we've been wrestling with this pandemic. Some of the cracks in terms of how our country, the USA, handles the most vulnerable among its population. As Christians, we're called to be little Christ and to begin repairing and dealing with these cracks as Christ prepares to come again. Jerusalem and Judea are mentioned here because, like nearly every prophetic word, Jesus' prophetic word here has a present component and a future component, something that's immediately applicable to the people at the time and something that's applicable for all time, for eternity. Jesus' words here, the hearers probably understood them as describing some of the sufferings that would happen when the Roman destruction of Jerusalem occurred in AD 70. That's probably what the writer of Luke had in mind when he included that in the text here. But I think it's a good word for us as well. We get to be on the lookout for the ways in which God is revealing the cracks in the world's foundations. That's what the parable of the fig tree that Jesus offers here is all about. Know that things have not yet been made perfect, and don't be surprised when they're not perfect. Finally, Jesus shows us, exemplifies to us how he tends to his foundation. He models it for us. He teaches in the temple, and then he goes off to a mountain in isolation to pray. We need that balance of being in front of people and retreating to be with God. If we don't have that, our foundations will crumble. I wonder, how is your faith foundation doing? What cracks has God revealed in it? That's all for Luke chapter 21. Tomorrow, the 13th of May, we'll be looking at Luke 22. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.